For the first time investor, you've got to, like I did, like I was self-taught. I just kept showing up to all these events, trying to meet people, network, and then you'll find something.
This is the real estate investing experience. We get it. Real estate can be rough sometimes, and that's why we bring in the experts to talk about the experiences you won't hear anywhere else with your hosts, John Cohen and Chris Grinzik.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Experience. I'm your host, Chris Grinzik, here with my co-host, John Cohen. And today in the studio, we have Reed Goossens, who is the founder of RSN Property Group from Australia. And he's just going to help us talk about some real estate, his background, and some other stuff we got going on. So Reed, how you doing?
G'day, mate. Thanks for having me in. Yeah. It's pretty exciting to be on the show and see what you guys are building right now. It's awesome.
Yeah, thanks for joining. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. We're in my house. I don't have to travel far.
Yeah, that's nice.
I'm the spoiled one. So the only problem I have is my wife and baby, and trying not to wake her up. So I got no complaints.
I hear you. So Reed, you're in town from LA, right?
Yep.
What are you doing in town?
Was here for a wedding and off to DC tomorrow. We've got my wife's cousin's son's bar mitzvah over the weekend. So we met up with Jonathan Toomler yesterday, had a great weekend with friends celebrating their marriage, and just getting back into New York City because I've been here about 18 months and I've got to spend more time here. The sun's out, beautiful architecture, and it's been just awesome to be back.
I hear. Awesome. So why don't we start off, because I know a little bit about your background. I know John knows you better, but you can fill me in, fill other people in, kind of just what your background is, obviously from LA, from Australia, but, how you got into a little bit, what you're working on now,
Yeah, well, it's a long story, but it's but I'll do the cliff notes. So originally from Australia, my weird accent. Picked up the book Rich Dad Poor Dad back in 2009 after traveling the world. Spent some time in London, spent some time in the south of France, working for some wealthy billionaire oligarchs on their super yachts. And we can get into that story in a little bit. But
that's different.
Was it like that show on TV?
But better. That was before that show was cool, Below Deck. But really returned back to Australia in 2010. And my background's in structural engineering. That's what I went to school for. Was in my cubicle, just, wanting to do more with my life. I felt like I was an athlete sitting on the sideline of a basketball court, just watching my life go by. And I was like, I didn't sign up to sit in a cubicle for the next 40 years of my life. Really enjoyed studying civil engineering, but it's a great problem solving degree, but I just, I had more to give. So at the same time, I had met this beautiful girl, Erica, who's now my wife. She's American. She was happening to come to Australia to study her master's, and I was like just so hungry to be. It was a bit of depression, but also like hungry to change. Like after traveling the world for 2 years and coming back to Australia, nothing had really changed. I didn't really want to go out and drink with my buddies and spend money. I wanted to learn about okay, how do I take control of my life? And Rich Dad Poor Dad was that book that sort of gave me the why, and then I had to go figure out the how. And over the next couple of years, was self-taught, was going to do some stuff in Australia. But my wife then, my girlfriend moved out, Erica, to Australia, did her master's degree in Australia. And then I was working for a mining company, earning six figures, really good wage. And then end of 2011, she finished her master's, and I was really passionate to come back here to New York City.
When she finished her master's, was her plan, it was master's come home?
Yeah, master's come home. So the way in which we met in 2009, I was on the super yachts for another 6 months, crossed the Atlantic Ocean to the Caribbean, backpacked around states, fell in love with New York, was like, I have to live here at some point in my future. Went to LA, confessed my love for Erica, moved back to Australia. She came out in 2011. It was an 18-month course, so she came out in only 2010, 2011. And then at that time, it was picking up the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, trying to really hone my life in. And I went to a lot of the equivalent of real estate investor meetups in Australia. There's no multifamily in Aussie, but there's lease options and flipping houses and all that sort of stuff. So I was going to do something, but then I was like, oh man, I really want to still live in New York. So she happened to be finished. I'm like, hey, let's just freaking do it. And there was a really awesome visa for Australian people who have gone to university, and you just have to have a job offer. So I quit my job. She came with me. We moved to New York City, and I had a A4 piece of paper with every single engineering company on there, and I just print out my portfolio of I think I was been working for 3 or 4 years at that time, but I had experience working on the London 2012 Olympic Games, blah blah blah, and I literally pounded the street, like just pounded the pavement, and walked into every single firm. I had about 40 different names on that sheet, and over, every day I'd try and do 3 or 4, and I'd knock on the doors, and some people, I couldn't get past security sometimes. Some people were like, what the hell are you doing here? Like, get the hell out. And then one guy was like, oh yeah, I'll interview you, and I was really aiming for less than 30 people in the company because you wouldn't have HR. I didn't go to school here, so people are automatically, HR people are like, oh, you don't have an American university, but I had 4 or 5 years experience, and so I had to stand out, and just putting anyone who's listening, like, if you freaking put your job up online or you try to apply for a job on Indeed.com, it just goes in the black hole of nothing.
So as I was going to say, you printing out that list
just to
start, that stands out enough, right? How many engineers out there, how many, whatever your job is, how many of them are printing out a list of 40 companies, whether they're moving to a different state or in their backyard? They're not.
And I think the other thing is that I was all in, right? Like, I quit my job in Australia. I had 3 months on a tourist visa to freaking find a job, to then go to Canada to say, yeah, I've got because you have to leave the country to apply for the visa, then come back in. And so went knocking on all these doors. I started playing rugby in New York, and that was an awesome experience. And through that, got an introduction to an architecture firm, and started being a CAD monkey, as they say, for doing up AutoCAD and drawings. And that was really that's the sort of the coming to America, and then finally got a structural engineering job. And then I think within a month of being fresh off the boat, I was at my first, and I remember New York REI, NYC, Nick Tang.
He's the first one that comes up in like all the searches. I think that was one of the first ones I went to too.
But there's NY REI and there's NYC REI. There's also there's 2 groups, and I went to that one, and I just remember coming here and going, well, excuse me if I'm swearing this shit. Go for it. In Aussie, I thought the networking was good, but being in the Big Apple, New York City, like fast talking Americans, I had no idea what a freaking cap rate was. Like, I had to oh my gosh. And actually the guy that I'm staying with right now in New York, he was the other Aussie that I met at that RIA all those years ago. And anyway, so that's sort of the journey here. And then that was in 2012. And I think within the first 6 months, I'd bought my first property for $38,000 in upstate New York, because the barriers to entry here are a lot lower than they are in Australia. So anyone who's listening to this thinking, shit, I'm on the fence, get off the fence, because even now you can still get started with less than 50K and just get your feet wet, right? And that deal, those couple of deals in upstate New York, and we can talk about that, were a great learning curve. But I remember traveling on the subway, reading all these books, but it's sort of like, you can read about going to the gym, but you don't actually get buffed by going to the gym. You actually got to go to the gym. Right?
I wish it was that way.
Yeah.
I know. I was reading a couple articles the other day. I stepped in the scale and I was 2 pounds heavier. I was really disappointed.
So yeah, that's sort of the ethos. But what I also noticed here in the States was that a lot more content was available for free. Like, what I'd pay a guru in Australia, like $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. I remember picking up a book and it was like called the Flip book, FLIP. I don't know if you ever read it. It's like a green book. I can't remember who wrote it, but it was just like, it talked about how to find like yellow letters and bird dogging and like how to select a neighborhood or a market. And I was just like, wow, this isn't a book, and I paid $10 for it. So just the access to knowledge here in the States. In Australia, I would have had to pay maybe some. It wasn't just readily available, just because our population's smaller, blah, blah, blah. So that's, in a nutshell, my start here in the United States.
Gotcha.
So,
and then at what point did you, because I'm assuming you're still in New York at that time, right?
Yep.
What point did you move out to LA and switch over to the multifamily stuff that you're doing now?
Well, so the first deal I actually bought was a triplex for $38,000 in Syracuse, New York. And it was just like...
That's a nice price.
Nice price. On paper, it looks great, but also subsequently learned that, we had a drive-by shooting and we had Section 8. Like, it was a great... Again, got my feet wet. On paper, it looked great. Did all the numbers for the first 6 months, was going well, and then we had
and then shit hit
the fan.
The wheel, it's like got a flat tire and you go to change it and the axle's gone.
Yeah. And so it was a real big learning looking back on. Okay, I'm paying $38,000 for this. People are paying, I think it was $700 a month for the unit, right? So I think a mortgage would have been less to buy that property than the rent was.
Right.
It was all Section 8, and it just wasn't. It was sort of like people having two dogs in cages next to each other, like they were just like fighting, and it just wasn't the right tenant profile in there.
Gotcha.
And my, like, you know, blowing up my property manager, and then now looking back on what I know is like I had one property. The property manager was getting maybe like 10% a month on, you know, $1,000.
I talk about that all the time when people ask, like, what are you paying management fees? And you know, how do you know if the property manager cares? I'm like, in the single family world, that's the problem. You know, you let's say collect $5,000 a month.
You're making no money.
The manager gets 10%. It's $500 bucks. That's $6,000. You can't. He needs 1,000 of those properties to have a support a business, because that's 6,000. That's not what he makes.
Right.
He's got staff, infrastructure, costs. He's making no money.
Mm-hmm.
So you think you're making money? He's making less. Why does he care?
Exactly.
You know, there's no point.
Right.
And that's the tough part. You know, same thing with me. When, you know, people know my story of the tax deeds. You know, scaling that was tough. You know, it was tough with management companies. Now, you found some young kids that were willing to do it totally different, but that's the problem. Mm-hmm. That's one of the challenges in that space. But I agree with you. Getting started, you know, I live here. It's tough in New York. It's tougher in Australia. If you say you can't do it, that's your own problem, because anyone can. And I think Reed illustrated that really, really, really well.
Yeah, and the big thing for me was like, it was getting started, right? It was getting off the fence, and I was using my own money, and the other thing was I couldn't get any loans because I was fresh off boat. Didn't have a credit score. Didn't even know what a credit score was. Mm-hmm. So I had to go to a local bank, and they used to be called First Niagara. Then I think they're called Key Bank or Key West or whatever. Anyway, upstate New York, and I made a relationship with a local bank guy, and I was like, look, you're not going to give me any money for a loan. I'm going to have to buy this property all cash, but I want to start depositing my cash on my checks every month. And over a period of time, over about a 3 or 4 month period, he saw that money was coming in. So he then, you know, gave me 50% I think it was $38,000 plus I put 10 grand into it. So it was like nearly 50K. So he gave me a line of credit essentially for $25,000.
Right.
I went and bought a second property with that as another duplex. That was a lot better because it was just, we can talk about tenant profiles if you want, but like these were immigrant tenant profiles, and they were just like, they just wanted to pay their rent on time, and they didn't want any hassles. Yeah. But I wasn't forcing any appreciation because these are 2 and 3 unit complexes. So that was sort of the start into the real estate world.
Have you sold those properties?
Oh, they're long gone. They're long gone. And in that time, I sort of realized that I was still working full time. Wasn't getting paid a lot in New York City, but had already sort of hit a. You know, I think I had 3 properties max. Like it would have been a combined total of like $200,000 worth of actual real estate, and I wasn't still financially free. And so I was like, man, I was there. Like, what? I've already hit the end of my tether here. I flipped a house in Philadelphia, which was a whole shabacle in itself. But the real big thing for me was my buddy came down from Canada. I think it was a Christmas of 2013. This was just before I was about to move to LA. Oh no, it was 2012, 2013. And I was like, yeah, man, I've got 3 properties in upstate New York, about to flip a house. Like, I'm crushing it. And we had actually studied civil engineering together in Australia. And he says to me, oh, Reed, you know, that's awesome, man. Like, well done. He's like, I just closed on a 70 unit deal. And I said, it's like 70. Like, he's like, yeah, 70. And I was like, how the hell did you do that? Well, he's like, oh, well, I got my mum and dad pitched in. I had 2 mates. They pitched in $100,000, and we could do a seller carryback finance. And I'd heard about all these terms, but he did it on a commercial scale. And he was talking about non-recourse debt. And he was in Canada. It was multifamily. And I was like, holy crap. Like, wow. Yeah. Like, and he took the power of other people's money. And that's really where I was like, okay, this is the next level. Like, if I want to get to, like, I can't just be using my own money all the time, because there was a ceiling. Yeah. And so through that, got a mentor, through that, build the brand, build my own podcast, because, you know, like you guys are doing, it's to share a story. But I also was really wanting to niche hard, and the podcast started with just educating international investors about what's credit, what's an LLC, how to find a market, like, because there was a lot of people coming into the country. But that gave me that I was different. As soon as I opened my mouth, I've got an Australian accent, like, so I needed to lean into what I knew, which was foreign investing or foreign investors coming to the country. And over the last 3.5 years in the podcast, I've now niched and pivoted, and now it's just encompassing everything US related investing. And it started being, from real estate investing to talking about my problems to helping other people, realize that you can become financially free through real estate investing in the United States. But this is how you do it. And this is the struggles that I went through, and no one was talking to the international investors. So
I can't even imagine, because I played soccer at Hofstra.
Okay.
And we had a ton of international, and I mean, just hearing about the visas and the credit scores, I mean, that's so much stuff going on. I can't even imagine trying to wade through that just to be able to buy real estate in another country. Do most of them live overseas, or do most of them live here with like some sort of a visa or a green card? It's different.
Yeah, look, the special sauce is that it was my way of niching and creating a business around the podcast. But most people at that time were buying these turnkey houses in the Midwest, and it looked great on paper, but they were sort of having to buy 5, 6, 7 of them at a time to make it, back to your point, to make the property management more eligible, to make it work. But back to your question, is like, yeah, a lot of people were living internationally, but it wasn't. I was just trying to describe the benefits of investing here and compare that to other First Nations like Australia, or developed nations, I should say, Australia, Europe, and how the cap rates were still so healthy compared to what we're seeing in other countries. So, yeah.
So, obviously, that your story alone it makes someone here, 17, 20, 25, 30, 40, 50, it can't be that hard for that person because they already lived here. They have credit, good or bad. That's a different story.
that could be a couple episodes worth.
Yeah, exactly. I can't speak to that side of it, but they didn't have those challenges. The challenges that they have are the other ones. It's getting up and doing it,
right?
Which you've clearly executed that beautifully. So, what challenge? Getting over that side of it, because those challenges we could speak about for hours. What do you think, now that you're here, now that you're doing it, now that you've executed extremely well? I know Reed, I've known him we spoke about it on your podcast the other day. Can't believe how fast it goes. And Reed's one of the better guys out there. I could speak highly about him. He does it right. What are the challenges now that you see? Because right now I think is a weird part of the market. We're still buying stuff. I know Reed's still buying stuff. But what are we buying, right? That's one of the challenges. But what do you see today as some of the biggest challenges facing a new investor that's just starting, or just listening to this episode, or just listening to yours? What are their challenges going to be?
Yeah, I think, look, at the end of the day, that old Chinese proverb about planting a tree, 20 years ago, you got to start at some point, and you can't ever, and people who are like, I'm just going to keep sitting on the fence until the market's, I don't think we'll ever have a 2008 to 2012 again. We'll have a softening, but a complete crash where there's blood on the street. I don't think that, a lot of people like yourself, JC, have made a lot of money in the last recession. And we can talk a lot about, different urban centers have just boomed through that last recession. But for the first time investor, you've got to, like I did, like I was self-taught. I just kept showing up to all these events, trying to meet people, network, and then you'll find something. And it, like me, I made mistakes along the way. I stuffed up my first property. My first flip was a disaster. It took a few false starts to get going.
That's a good point, because you're still here.
Yep.
You didn't declare bankruptcy.
Nope.
You haven't gone completely upside down.
Nope.
Because I tell people all the time, pending the debt you get, as long as you know what you're doing, or if you don't get debt at all, if you invest $50,000 and there's no debt, or it's non-recourse, whatever that situation looks like, worst case scenario, you're going to lose $50,000. Like, it can't.
As long as you don't pour more into it.
Well, no, it can get bad, but like Reed said, same thing on my side too. I bought houses with no roofs on them. I bought houses with no floors in them, and I did a flip. I lost $80,000. Right? Like, it happens. It sucks, but we're still here. We're still fighting, and the problem is, if you do it again and again and again, and keep making the same mistakes, stop. Right?
At least learn from them.
And learn from them. But Rito's over 1,000 units. He lives in LA. The properties are mostly in Texas, correct? So you can invest out of state. He's from Australia. So you could be out of the country, out of state.
You don't get much farther than that.
Yeah. Australia to Texas, that's a long distance. So people say, it's not in my backyard. That's not even near the backyard.
Right.
But the worst case scenario, you got to learn from your mistakes, get started. I tell people all the time, I say, what's the biggest piece of advice you can give me? I said, do it. Do something. Invest in a deal. Even if it's not your deal, give it to a sponsor. Buy a program, buy a book. Here's Reed's book. How much is it? Buy this book, maybe
$17.
$17. You might pick up something here. $17. you buy a book, right?
Yep.
Instead of just trying to, sit back and wait for the home run because they don't come. Buy something. Buy a $17 book.
To the home run thing, it's about getting base hits, and those base hits may be a few strikes at the beginning, which is okay. But if you, to your point, like with me, I bought a $38,000 house property. It was my own cash. Mm-hmm. I wasn't gambling. I knew what I was doing. I didn't lose the money at all. I actually made a little bit of money, and it cash flowed quite nicely over 6 months. It just, other things outside of my control, like, that I learned very quickly about the property management, about Section 8, all these things added up. And I ended up selling, I think I sold it for like $45,000, but with all the cash flow, I think I netted like $5,000, and it was a great experience, right? Yeah. And I sold it a year later. Yeah. The second property that I bought up in Syracuse was more of an ATM. It was $45,000, and it just $1,200 a month on time, and they were just like boom, 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 boom. But it was never going to go crazy appreciation. It wasn't never going to be worth $300,000. So I also had to weigh up that. I was like, okay, is my $45,000 better spent building out a syndication business rather than, okay, I put in this money in this property. It's making me $1,200. That was the gross. Let's call it maybe, I don't know, $700 a month. Is that really changing the needle in my day-to-day life?
No, it's a couple extra dinners a month.
Exactly. I'm not becoming long-term wealthy from it, which again then goes back to the learning curve, and like, okay, well, I need to OPM, syndication. How do I plant long-term seeds in these bigger deals, less risk? We can talk about all that. But it was, again, I was just moving forward and keep the stepping stones towards, my end goal, which was financial freedom, financial freedom.
That's how we got hooked up, and I started. It was back in 2016. Me, my mom, my cousin bought a flipping course. My mom, my cousin bought it. I got dragged in. We failed for 8 months, didn't buy a deal, and then he was going to try to show us how to do the stuff in Philly. Drove down, hated it, so decided not to do that. It was just a terrible, terrible thing. Didn't want to do it, and then we invested passively in one of his deals. He had a little 8-unit he was doing in Covington, and we were like kind of the same thing. We kind of saw the scale up like a lot of people. You start with the stuff in the single family side. My mom, my cousin both knew it. My mom had rentals. My cousin was getting his real estate license. So they dragged me along to there, and then you just start learning more, and you're like, okay, I can buy more units at one time. Just happened to be while we were learning, he had an 8-unit under contract. We said, instead of, trying to pick up the pieces ourselves, let's invest, pick his brain. Mm-hmm. And then from there, pretty quickly, we partnered on 17 units, an 82 unit. And then I quit my job and started working for Toro. So, I mean, it was awesome. Same type of thing, just getting your foot in the door one way or the other, whether it's using your own money and going to do it or, investing with somebody else. It's just getting started.
And even to that point, another story of, did you guys ever flip a house?
We tried with you unsuccessfully once.
Exactly. And then that was a relationship. Same thing. We got smoked. We own some property in Charleston. Our manager was phenomenal. I love her. She recommended us not do a flip with her husband. We did it, and we paid the consequences of it. It was a nice loss. Yeah. And that's from someone's experience. At this point, I had 2,500 units under my belt.
Wow.
On the multifamily side. I've flipped houses before. Too much trust in someone that, who knows what happens, and be that as it may. But that's another example of someone that educated themselves, spent the money, didn't work, still here, living, breathing, and he's an integral part of, 3,000 plus units. And, basically our whole Jacksonville operation, we have 1,000 units in Jacksonville, and that was sort of Chris coming in and saying, the first deal we bought was down there. Relationship with the manager, it was a deal that was brought to us, whatever, long story short.
That was the 82 unit we partnered on. The 82 unit
we partnered on.
That's how we got into Jacksonville.
Yeah, it was my manager that I've known since 2013, 2014, whatever it was. She managed the property already. It was brought to us with a crazy price on it. Some mistakes were made during the underwriting, and I Googled the property. I was like, oh shit, Lisa manages that. I picked up the phone. I was like, tell me about the deal. She's like, actually a really solid deal. I said, all right, guys, we're buying it. Do everything you can. I'll help you. Went to get debt, or the debt was already on the property because the buyer fell apart. So we stepped in, called Freddie Mac. They're like, yep, you're good. You've done it already. Debt's not a problem. Then it was raising the money. Everyone tried. Maybe everyone did a little bit worse than they thought. Everyone out of the box thinks they're going to raise, I can raise $1 million. Yeah. But so everyone came up a little short. So I made a couple calls, got some people. Deal ended up being crowdfunded by a contact of mine who no longer works at a company that's no longer in business. But so we did the deal, and then that sort of, spurred our whole Jacksonville development. It's another story of single family flipping turning into multifamily syndication or multifamily investing without ever doing a flip or it not going the right way. So this is another piece of evidence that you don't need to be, a master's graduate from NYU in real estate development to be, to do what we do.
Right. And I think but your story is, for those younger people listening to this, it's like, it's a good way of, you still got to keep, you got to keep a roof over your head. You got to come somewhere pay the bills. But if you can somehow get into a job, like I know even your story, you started in brokerage. Mm-hmm. I transitioned from structural engineering into working for a real estate developer. Now I'd already done a couple of syndications when I did that, but it was sort of like, because I didn't have a green card at the time, back to visas. I had like the biggest uphill battle. So anyone who's listening to this can be like, Reed didn't have visas. He didn't do this. There's no excuse.
It probably gets old saying it, but I've seen it firsthand. I've had a couple of roommates who are from the UK and they go through that process, and it's just an uphill battle. It feels like you never win. Basically everybody says either get really lucky or get a green card. It's really basically what the result is.
Find yourself a nice American woman.
Exactly. That's what I did. Thank you, honey. But I think your story is really, I think all three of us, like you found a passion and you try to get a paying job to keep the bills paid whilst learning. Mm-hmm. And to back to you, like, how do you get started in today? So try and see what skill sets you currently have. And that could go for anything, whether you're on the trade side or you're a CPA or you're good with numbers or whatever it might be, and see if you can develop your skills over a period of time. Now, it's going to take time. It's not just going to happen. Like, I've been at this since 2009. It's 2019, so over 10 years. And I've now become financially free, but it's taken a long time. It's a lot of long weekends, a lot of, same with you guys, it doesn't just happen overnight. So two things is like setting the mindset right on the front end to be like, back to the fitness analogy, I'm going to lose 20 kilos in a year, and you get to the end of the year and you didn't lose 20 kilos. Are you going to fail? Yeah, of course you're going to give up because your mindset only had a year. But if it's like, it's going to be my new lifestyle, like being an entrepreneur, being an investor, it is a lifestyle change. You want to live and breathe it. It's going to be in it for the long haul, and anything worth doing is going to take a long period of time to do. So
I couldn't agree with that more. I know you speak to a lot of younger kids today that want to get involved, and everybody wants that, I want to make $1 million and I want to make $100,000 and I want to be a real estate investor. It's like, you can, you might not get there tomorrow. Right. It does take time, and you gotta put that mindset out there. You can buy a home run and get lucky and a needle in a haystack. But realistically speaking, as Reed said earlier, you hit a couple singles. There's nothing wrong with a solid deal that does what it's supposed to do, and it's a solid one, because you're not gonna go broke hitting singles. If you're just going up there trying to jack home runs, things go wrong quickly, and you don't know. So you just gotta get that mindset set up that you're gonna be in it for the long haul. But similarly, the first property I bought was in 2009. I was just just graduated college, bought a property with my brother who played rugby at school. We bought that property, and it just, it was like, wow, this destroyed the parties. I was like, now my
rugby players are really well known for being super delicate with properties.
They treated very nice. They clean up after themselves. It's beautiful. And my brother lived there for 2 years. I'm like, Doug, what are you doing? Like, really? You live here? Like, we own this thing. And he's like, no, it's fine. The parents co-signed. I'm like, oh, great. You still got to fix it. You still got to, do it. But it worked really well while we had it. We still do. Same thing, but it wasn't, I didn't go, I didn't wake up. Now, I could easily, and I think you can too, someone fresh out of the box that's never done anything, you can go buy a 200-unit property. There's nothing wrong with that. Surround yourself with the right people, buy the right content, talk to the right people. there's so much free content out there. So you can buy a 200 unit first. There's nothing wrong with buying a $50,000 house and learning that way either. You can get to the same place quick.
Right.
So
I think
no excuses.
Having people around you, a mentor, really important. I back in 2013, I had a decision to make. Like, if I'm going to go to this next level of syndication, I need to learn from someone who's doing it.
Yep.
And I chose someone who didn't actually have a lot of experience at the time. I think it was like his third student. But I think he did one deal at the time. But it was more like, he was actively doing it. And the big thing that I got pissed off about when I came to America was like, went to so many freaking stages and everyone's talking about what they did back in 90s and the 2001. And it's like, what are you doing right now? Right?
Well, that's everyone's talking about 09 now, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I know, because I know the mentor that Reed had, and same thing, I had a mentor too, right? In 2013, same exact period. And, you go through it and you look back, and I talk to my buddies now, and I think you say things like, I paid someone that had really no experience whatsoever. They just timed the market right, and they've done very well. But you know what? We've got to learn at a period where we could have made some mistakes, and the market's helped.
Right.
We probably won't make those mistakes again. But it's funny because you're right. I picked the same thing. I don't think my mentor at the time had sold anything, and he just had acquired stuff.
Right. But
he was here. He was in Long Island. He was not too far away. And without me writing that check, realistically, that was like the kick in the ass. Said, shit, that's a lot of fucking money.
Right. And that's another thing is like you parting way with something, and a little bit of like there's two schools of thought about, particularly when I go home and people are like, oh, you had a mentor, like, and you paid them. Like, Australians like, what do you mean? The mentors are supposed to be like just there to guide you. It's like, no, it's more of a coach. And so I always say that, like, as most people, like, would a professional, what's his name? Steph Curry, would he have got to where he was without a coach? No. And so, that's the same thing.
He is a bit of a freak.
He's a bit of a freak, but he probably still had people to mold him along the way.
Of course,
right.
You need it.
And he also got born to an ex-NBA player, so I'm sure that helps as well.
and a mother that was an athlete too. But still, they have shooting coaches.
Right.
They have head coaches. Sure. And, the shooting coach for Steph Curry is not a better shooter than Steph Curry.
Right.
But
can teach.
It can teach. He knows what he can give you the tools. So there's nothing right to be able to say, what coaching program would you recommend? So the one that you're going to use, right? Because you could have paid a coach, took all his information, and went out and started buying Bitcoin. that mentor program wouldn't have done shit. So you got to use the tools you're given.
Right.
And your coach could be a bad at what he does, but he may be able to educate you on stuff that you're not looking for.
Right.
And that's the purpose of it. Whether it's a mentor, a coach, an internship, whatever it is, it's important to know what you're doing. You can't just go dive headfirst into something unless you have an infinite supply of money and cut your teeth on that way. That's probably not the best recommendation.
Right.
But you gotta get involved in the end, and you gotta do what you gotta do.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, our coaching program didn't work for us at all for the flipping. Didn't flip a single thing, but at the end of the day, it put me in the seat. So it's a little bit different way of looking at it.
Correct.
Now, I didn't necessarily fork over most of the bill. I helped, I was at a little bit different stage in my life. So I guess percentage-wise, it was probably significant. But, I didn't have the same experience of having somebody really help. It was more of going out and getting a job, which I guess is a different type of.
And I can tell you, Chris works for me. I didn't get much help. I was like, here, read this book. That's how you underwrite. Go find deals, and he bring them in. I'm like, well, this is crap.
Yeah. What mentorship?
It was a different type of
but there's no path well traveled. I guess there's not a silver bullet. And for anyone listening out here thinking there is going to be a silver bullet, you're wrongly mistaken.
Correct.
And it's going to take time, and you just need to pace yourself and can keep putting that one foot in front of the other, and you'll look back in 5-6 years time and go, wow, I've come a long way.
Yeah, for sure.
I couldn't say it any better. I mean, there's no magic. Trust me, if there was a magic line or a magic offer paper, or if there was a magic LOI that just won deals, then this podcast probably wouldn't be taking place, and Reed wouldn't have gladly shown up today. Because if we had it, we wouldn't be doing different things. You just got to try different things. You got to just try something new every day, and just keep make progress. I tell people, it's like a snowball rolling downhill. When you start, you're like, this is never going to work.
Right.
Don't get shiny object syndrome. Keep going. Because then once you get momentum, then you get deals sent to you that are off market.
Right.
Then you come across, dilapidated deals that the banks own, but that doesn't happen out of the box.
No.
So you gotta, it's a slow and steady process.
And I think it goes back to, like, I spent many years spinning two wheels, it was actually three, like finding deals, finding investors, and trying to have a full-time job, right? And because you have to keep a roof over your head. So it's going to be a lot of hard work, and it's going to be when it does break, and that you sort of, I always felt like I was a big airplane, like taxiing around the airport, and haven't actually taken off yet. Looks good, looks shiny, right? And then finally, all of a sudden, you're on. Okay, I'm about to take off. I've just got from the gate, and then I'm on the runway. Okay, oh crap, I'm in the air.
I'm closing tomorrow.
Yeah, like, and there's that turbulence. You're going to go through a bit of turbulence, and then there's a few deals that we've done on the big, and it's not until you get to cruising altitude that you sometimes cannot take the foot off the pedal, but you can have the co-pilot fly for you.
It's on autopilot a little bit.
So, yeah.
So when did it break for you?
I think the big thing for me broke, obviously doing, 1,000 units is, but that first 100, so I was involved. I raised a bunch of money for my mentor, and I think that was a really good, I didn't have a ton of time to find great deals. Yeah. So did you
step into it with kind of a network that had some access to capital?
Well, that's where the podcast, I had to go and create one, right? And I didn't know, I'm an engineer. I had no freaking idea about writing books and podcasts and all that sort of stuff. It was like, I just needed to start. But I had a story to tell. And because I had a story to tell, people wanted to listen. And through that, I built a network. I was only doing a small part of the big deal, which was raising a small amount of money.
Right.
And back to like your question, deck, do it around 50. I mentor to raise money, and I've got this partner who now focuses more on the capital raising side than I do. Even though I've got the books and the podcast and I love that side of it, my skill set comes through my construction management background and structural engineering through operations.
Right.
Now, do I want to be doing that for the rest of my life? Hell no. I'm going to someone eventually, but I know how to trenches and getting dirt under my nails. I think that's the big thing. So,
I think there was some good look in the mirror and say, I'm really good at this.
Right.
It was, I'm going to try it. And I think that's what everybody has to go out there. I'm not saying to go out there, go to Korea and meet 4 people and sign LLC complete partnerships. Don't do that. But if you come from a background where maybe you have a good network of people that could put $100,000 into it and 3 of them end up investing, but that's $300,000 that you could gladly contribute to a deal. And you're an integral part of that deal. And
you get returned on your money, and you planted a seed for a 5-6 year horizon that you're going to get an ROI on.
Exactly.
For not putting any money in the deal.
Exactly. So I think team building, and not partnerships and LLCs, but team building and structuring properly and getting involved. That was getting involved, raising money for his mentor, where he was able to put together a resume, a track record, whatever you want to call it. Now that track record can be parlayed into, I'm going to go do this on my own.
Right.
And you could do the same thing. And like I said, now he has a partner that focuses on the capital. And Reed is capital raising, but that's his part. And knowing your weaknesses and knowing where you could bring somebody in as a team member helps dramatically. And that's another hurdle that everyone has to go over, because everybody wants to do it by themselves. Right. Everyone wants to be, I want to be the head honcho. And you got to realize that maybe you can. But it's not a bad thing to have the right people involved, just as another set of eyes. And if you give something up for that, well, what would you have done if you couldn't do it?
Right. I think it's also separating out the hats, like going out and, say even if you're doing a really awesome, juicy flip, right? Just, a single family house, there's still a lot of hats to be worn about who finds a deal, who brings equity into the deal. Similar with, multifamily deals, like you've got to look for other partners and understand that it's not about the money you make on the first deal, it's about getting a foot in the door. Yeah. And that one deal will then snow roll into a second deal. And it proves to the broker that you can close. It goes on your website. It goes on your pitch deck. It goes to, you blast out your email to the 40 people in your email list or whatever it is. You're like, we closed, like it's just, again, picking in the eye, like slow and steady wins the race, and you're slowly going up the mountain.
And I would bet, and maybe I'm wrong, but the 50 people that said no, when they see that you actually ended up closing, and then they see the deal sell, now they're pissed.
Right.
Now, I'm sure out of the
assuming
50...
it went well.
No, it did.
And I'm sure more of those 50, maybe you got more of them on the next one.
And back to your question of like what happened, it was literally just those little... talk about runs on the board. It was the 150, then the 200, and then more on all these deals. and back to changing the mindset of people. Like I was a civil engineer, a structural engineer. When I started building my RSN, and RSN's now replaced by Wildhorn Capital with my business partner Andrew, but I had the podcast, I had I had investing in the US. It was trends and awareness through education, and I created a platform, I created a website, and wrote a few articles about story and stuff like that. And it just took time, but those little deals, with the education piece going on, and then doing these little deals on the side for other sponsors, that slowly build up the network, and then I could go out and do my own deals. And then we can talk a little bit about how Andrew and I partnered, because there was also trials and tribulations in that, because we don't have to talk about right now, but it was more like realizing again what your weaknesses was, and trying to bring on a partner who can help you and be accountable to you to go out and do more deals. So
that's like you said before, that knowing what you're good at and what you're bad at, that's the first, I tell people, a couple of things they say, get involved, do it. Just do it. Fuck it up, make a mistake, do it, right? Mm-hmm. We all know that. But I think the next part of that is looking in the mirror and knowing the good, the bad, the ugly, right?
Right.
If I can't do something, if I'm really bad with people, this is a tough business.
Right.
Find someone that really can have a good interaction. Maybe you're really good at underwriting. Maybe you're really good at finding deals. Maybe like picking up the phone and cold calling. But that's a huge thing. That's a whole nother. We could have a conversation on the structure behind the partnership and how did it start, because I'm sure it didn't start right out of the box of, hey, 50-50, let's go do some deals. I don't recommend that out of the box. Learn a little bit.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, and I think the big thing for the takeaway was that when I got to a certain point in my investing career, that I knew that I was still working full time. I couldn't underwrite all these deals. I had to go out and find someone who could, and I was really good at underwriting, but I had to find underwriting deal after deal after deal. I was trying to advise you have to underwrite 50 plus units, 50 plus deals in a market to get really comfortable with that market. Yeah. And then through that, you may find a deal. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I mean, it's funny you say that, because I've looked back at some of the stuff I did when I first joined, in like that 3-4 month period where he was like, hey, just go do it. It's literally the ugliest, shittiest underwriting I've ever seen in my life, and embarrassed. I almost want to delete it, but it's pretty funny.
It's good. It's good to look back.
It is.
It's funny. So we look back. So it's, now you're seeing deals that we offered on 4 or 5 years ago that are now selling again. Mm-hmm. So I like to take those, and I like to throw digs at brokers because it's fun, right? Why are you going to take it? It's like, wait a second,
just
you underwrote.
Keep honest.
You underwrote this to have a 1.2 NOI, and it's 5 years later, and you're at 1 million. Like, you were so wrong. Like, you had a year one pro forma. So, it just shows that no matter how good you are, and brokers are not good underwriters. Let's sweep that under. Anyone that listens to this or speaks to us or comes to our events or knows Reed, you probably know just as much as every single broker out there. The only thing that they do is they do it every day, so they pretend like they know more, because no one knows. And we look back at deals all the time, and I'm like, wow, thank God we didn't buy that one. Like, that's a war zone. They never got it over 80% occupied or whatever. But you gotta, I think that's great information. When you underwrite, you don't have to go to LoopNet, or you don't have to go on. Just pull up apartments.com, take 50 properties, and underwrite it. Right? You can underwrite it with the rent. You may need how many units there are and stuff like that. That's important. But practice, and you'll underwrite 50 deals, and you'll say, wow, look, these rents are really low. Mm-hmm. That might be a deal you try and buy, or you try and call a broker to help you buy, or try and find the owner. So,
and for those people out there who just don't know how to underwrite or don't like Excel, I do love Excel. I'm a numbers guy, but I needed to get out of my own way, and I needed to bring on some undergrads, and I paid them, I think, $15-20 an hour, and they could underwrite individually 4 deals a week. There's 8 deals that I didn't have to do. So I was creating a system, and also an investment into the business to be like, and this is going back 3.5-4 years ago, to get those just scale of deals to be underwritten by a team that was probably more quicker and easier than I could do it, and I was out of my own way. So
and that's the bread and butter, because like you said, like how many deals have you bought? How many multifamily deals in the last, let's call it 5 years, have you bought?
Well, I've been involved in syndicating 4, for other people, and then I bought 5 myself.
There you go. So let's just say, for argument's sake, 10.
Right.
You had 4 guys underwriting deals, 4 deals a week. And he bought 10. So that's 2 a year. If you're getting 4 deals a week, I mean, that just shows that, you're not going to every
2
deal.
out of 400 you're underwriting.
Yeah. Exactly. So if you're underwriting a deal a week,
it's 0.5%.
That's not even near, where you probably want to be. So you don't have to buy every deal that gets sent to your inbox. Not every deal is that exciting. When you first start, you're like, oh, I got a 200 unit. This is awesome. But underwrite a lot of them, and that's important. And like I said, you did it at first. You know what you wanted to look for. You didn't want to trip up on it and get too detail oriented. Brought on some people that were able to provide you with enough to look at it and say, tweak this, tweak this, tweak this. It ain't gonna work, or this is not even close.
Right.
That's super important. You got
it's creating a system that I didn't need to be involved in, right?
Exactly.
But I knew what I wanted to see.
Exactly.
Which was
you knew what you wanted. You wanted to be financially free. You didn't want to underwrite 100 deals a week because it takes time. So you went out and did it, put a system in place to do it, and now it's one less step, and you just got to the oversight. And that's
and I will say, like, literally on the train to here today, like, I've just spent a lot of money getting a whole new model built for me where I've got all these different levers to pull, for different financing. Future look ahead on NOI, I can do an original payback or compounding. There's all these things I can do, and I'm still sitting there. Like, my analysts are still taking it to like 95% of the way, and I'm coming in the last 5%, still having to do a lot of it. Spend an hour on a deal that could work, because deals are harder and harder to pencil.
Yeah.
That we're like, okay, what about the taxes? What about can we really get these rents in this market? Blah blah blah, and trying to put all the pieces together. And that's when my business partner comes in and answers those questions, or goes out and gets the answers, feeds it back to me, so I can keep underwriting. So yeah,
that's another another piece of advice right there. You can't do it all, but do what you do best, and build out that system. And that just comes from trial and tribulation and over again, and doing it. And you don't have to be an Excel wizard to build your own model, or start small, just income, expenses, and that's what it's going to make.
Right.
And you got to back into it, but you got to surround yourself with the right people.
Yep. Cool.
So what do you, because we asked this earlier and then we've kind of gone off a little bit, but what are you seeing today in the market and deals you're looking at?
Yeah, I think looking in the market today, we're definitely seeing that the old 15 to 17% IRR over 5 years, doubling your money in 5 to 6 years is not achievable anymore. Yeah. And people are up in arms. Oh, why not? Well, it's just not. And if you I come from a country where if you double your money in 10 years, you're doing really, really well for yourself. And particularly if you're not lifting a finger. Yeah. So house prices historically, you double your money every 10 years or whatever it is. That's where I come from. And so when I can go in and do that in a shorter period of time, maybe say instead of it's in 5 to 6 years, it's now in 7 to 8 years, or 8, 10 years. That's a really good return. Now, so I'm saying I'm trying to do a lot of calibrating the investors' expectations, looking at different, we've got a lot of retail investors in our deals, probably I think we set out like 550K ones to our investors. But we're looking now at private equity routes, because private equity sort of tracks the market a little bit.
Right.
I met a guy the other day who won a deal we were bidding on, and his private equity was like, we just don't want to lose money right now.
Yeah.
So
that's a very different mentality.
Like when you're trying to hit certain metrics, of course the numbers are not going to make sense, and I'm not going to win a deal. So I've got to go change my equity out. And that's really, like, deals could still need to be done. Private equity firms still need to place money. For the average retailer who's listening to this, that doesn't mean, it means that you're going to get less returns, but we're all making less returns, right? The GPs are making less returns. Yeah. The deals just are becoming thinner and thinner. And as we get into, we talk about the inverted yield curve right now. Like there's something coming around the corner very soon. How that's going to affect all of us, I think you need to be really cognitive of the type of debt you put on it, the leverage you put on it, and the fact that you're actually buying a true value add. Like, are you coming in and increasing rents $100 or $150? Like, that's true value add. You don't want to be, or are you taking it from 70% to 100%? There's a value add component there. Buying stabilized properties, depending on what your equity return metric is like. People are still doing that, and private equity is still doing that. But for those value add investors, you really got to be going into low leverage deals that your downside's protected. You're looking at like an exit expansion cap rate when you go to sell it in 5 years, assuming the market's going to get worse, which it probably will. And we can talk a lot about that as well. But we've been talking for a little while now, but we could be going for hours on this job.
It's funny. I mean, you still hear people expecting the 30 IRR deals because somebody bought something in 2010,
right?
And
which was just
someone's
silly.
looking for a catchy headline,
and
those things just few and far between now. I mean, we're banging our head against the wall all the time trying to find something that we can get a 20 on.
But even 20 is like out of this world. Yeah, that's silly.
We don't find any of that. I mean, that was, we were always looking for a 20. So then after splits, you come down into a mid-teens or a high teens, and we can't even, we're not
I know
really
we get-
finding it anymore.
In the office, I'm the one that gets beat up because I'm like, guys, 12 and 15% returns are great. They really are. I know that,
No,
it's not
historically,
that
they're fantastic.
sexy, but you got a 14 to 16% return is a solid return, because you could compare that with, oh, it's not good enough, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. All right, so you made 0.
Right.
Or you took a flyer on some guy because he showed you a 30.
Right, but it ended up being nothing.
And it's nothing. So there's something to say about
Keeping your money going and keeping the right, like investors also got to think about keeping their money turning over, and how like that's just keeping earning interest and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, cool.
You want to plug anything? I know you got your book.
Yeah,
You
man.
want to talk about the podcast?
Yeah, jump on reedgoossens.com. Check out the book, Investing in the US. We've got a second book coming out called 10,000 Miles to the American Dream.
So you're
busy guy. But yeah, check reedgoossens.com. It's reedgoossens.com, and you can hit me up there if you're ever in LA, you want to go out for a drink or a coffee, want to talk shop, let me know. So yeah.
All right, perfect. All right. Thanks for joining us. It was great.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.